Well, it's going to be nice to follow Nikki. That was fantastic. It kind of set the stage for what I'll be talking about this afternoon. And I would like to reiterate what she said about emotional. Multiple times sitting in the back of the room today, I was just overcome by how amazing people are that we're in relationship with. And to the point of where I was just even saying to myself, dude, just kind of chill a little bit, right? I was very touched, both by the incredible work of IE Media and Chris and others who were able to hone a story that was extremely meaningful. And I'm not saying that just because I'm blatantly a part of this entire organization and movement. I was personally moved. And to me, that's what this is all about, is this personal movement. And this personal movement is something that comes down to simply our choices. And our choices that have a profound impact on everything. And we have grown up, or I can speak for myself, I have grown up in a society that has limited my thinking, has limited my opportunities, has limited everything that I would think or I know I need to be able to make a difference. And it is time to unleash that. It's time to see it differently. It's time to be different. And I think there is an enormous amount that we can learn from one another and learn from the natural environment that we find ourselves in, because we've got lots and lots of challenges. I mean, challenges that aren't just kind of small. They are massive, and they have been reiterated multiple times today. But I just can't help but to remind us that it is all of them together that's creating these issues. It's not one single issue, right? It is the aggregate of it all. And that aggregate is such a significant impact on all of us that it is and will be what could be our demise from a societal collapse, because it really comes down to two things, right? The demeaning or the degradation of our natural resource base and the ongoing increased complexity of our current societies. When those things continue to be in conflict with one another on top of the economic stratification that we are seeing from who is poor and who has wealth, results in significant issues like this. When you can recognize that there are 1,600, and this is an old stat, but it's even smaller in terms of its impact, but greater in terms of its ramifications, that we've got 1,645 billionaires who represent roughly 6.4 trillion in wealth. And we've got over 3 billion people that represent roughly that same amount of wealth. It is something that has to be solved. It is something that cannot be ignored. It is something that we have to take full responsibility in addressing. And to address it means that we've got to come up with pretty significant solutions, like things that we've discussed today, a part of this conference, and solutions that are coming and being a part of many conversations around what we're doing. But these challenges are a real issue to how we see the world we live in, and then what we're going to do to take actions against it or for what we want. When I look at solutions, we all look for solutions. Unfortunately, this is what we've been seeing. I mean, I've shown this to some people before in a presentation, but I just can't escape what this means. It's exactly what Nikki was saying. It's as though people just don't know we exist. It's as though somebody just came along and said, you know what, you believe this, you think this, you can be this. Nope, not, can't, won't. It's as though it's just been canceled. And when we feel like it's canceled, then we start looking for ways to solve it that seem to be beyond our wildest imaginations, like this. Do we really believe what either one of them has to say is really going to address the complexities of the things that we're talking about? No. Absolutely not. But it is something for us to consider, in that people are looking for people to recognize that they exist. We all have an incredible value to bring to who we are, to the communities that we're a part of, to the opportunities to be a real change maker in them. But what we can't do is close our eyes and act as if none of this is really going on. That will not work. And it's far from being acceptable, right? We need better solutions than that. But unfortunately, as a society, we have really bought into this kind of apathetic, laissez-faire, kind of let's just let things go. And so that consumerism that can change things has also brought us to the point that we're here. It's that same movement, the same challenges, right? What is real? What is real? Are we going to really get to what is real? Or are we just going to dance around the things that really matter? And then we've got organizations that that position themselves to be able to have answers but really don't, right? And that's just a jab at my own industry that I'm in right now, right? Ultimately, guys, we really are going to rely heavily on one another to make a real difference in the lives of the people that are right in front of us. Now, I've been really influenced a lot by my faith and the spiritual people in my life. And one of the things I've been lately really inspired by is just how to be interested, explored, and engaged with people who are just in front of me. Just in front of me. The people I'm in relationship with. That I can really have a deep conversation with, a deep dive, an opportunity to make a difference. And if we all just did that little piece, it would change everything that we do and experience. The trouble is, many people all have answers. And it's important that we find ways to continue to work through what people are claiming will really address the things that are so important to be addressed. We have very little time left, right? And in things that I think we need to continue to engage with a sense of urgency, but at the same time, I really want to stress this. It's not just about urgency without any planning. It's urgency with a real deep commitment to doing it well, to doing it right. I am very committed to that. Anybody who knows me knows I'm just a stickler for, so what's the plan, right? so that we can at least start moving in a direction, and then we can pivot, we can change, we can make moves however we want, but let's put something together that is going and taking us in the right direction. There's two things that I would like to suggest that I think really we're going to have to address that are real issues. I'm not going to spend a whole lot on the first one. I'm going to spend more time on the second one. But first is our own self-interest. Many of the issues that we're dealing with today, most of us, and some of us for sure, will never ever see the end game. So I love Alan continuing to talk about how he is in the departure lounge. And we've had many debates over a campfire with whiskey in Africa many, many times, where he says, Trey, it's all about self-interest. We all have our own self-interest. And there's just no way we can get outside of it. But I would beg to differ, as I have with him, that he is one of the examples of someone who has. Because he's not going to get to see what things will look like when this all really happens. And that is just a touching moment to know that he is as committed, more committed than he's ever been. Yet he knows he's not going to see it with his own eyes. How do we get beyond our own self-interests? How do we see this as not just the beginning of something, but recognizing there is a consciousness that's going to be needed to take us to a whole nother level of impact? We are not going to solve this by just fixing systems. It is deeper than that. And it's something that we're all going to have to take serious consideration of. And as much as we want to ignore it and act like it's not happening, the fact is we are getting in our own way, aren't we? And just like for centuries, cattle has been blamed for the overgrazing, right? We should take responsibility for that which has happened. Ultimately, we are going to have to be different to be able to see the difference in the world around us. Thomas Merton's one of my favorite authors of all time, him, Wendell Berry, and a couple of others. And I haven't read any quotes, but I'm going to read this one because to me it's really important. When we come face to face with ourselves in the lonely ground of our own being, we confront many questions about the value of our existence, the reality of our commitments, and the authenticity of our everyday lives. I tell you, if I meet somebody who embodies that, their life is full of regeneration. Because we all know what the opposites are and what they look like. Wendell Berry said this in reference to this next area that I think is so important, is this whole decision-making. The developed nations have given to the free market the status of God, and we're sacrificing it to their farmers, farmlands, communities, forests, wetlands, prairies, the ecosystems, and watersheds. So even though on one side we've got the self-interest we're going to have to deal with, on the other side, we've just not been able to really make good decisions as society. Our decisions have been flawed in reference to how we're managing complexity for a very, very long time. Actually, since our understanding of us coming to a level of consciousness to know what's going on. And that poor decision-making, I think, starts with the fact that we've got new information that funnels into what I call current structures and frameworks. And then what comes out of it is something that Alan says often, which I think is really important. It lacks common sense and humanity. So I would say there's a real challenge among us, and it's not just about how we can tweak this and change this. We're going to have to fix the structure, the framework. Because you take this new information and you put it into an old framework, and I promise you, you're not going to get what you want out of it. I do think it is like rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. It's still going to go down. You have done nothing to help. And our opportunities are to recognize that what Alan discovered and what the Savory Institute is about is to introducing a holistic framework that allows decisions to be made differently. And even though our success and the things that we're known about is about how those decisions are made in land, I also believe they can be made that way in society, in organizations. So this organizational redesign needs to be about a holistic intelligence, a framework and structures that will then allow for abundance to come out the backside that's regenerative, that's holistic, that truly is something that will change everything that we want for the right reasons, in the right way. I love this passage in the Bible. It says, "And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, otherwise the skin bursts, the wine spills out, and the skins are ruined. But they put new wine into fresh wineskins, and both are preserved." So let me tell you what that means. This is a wineskin. And for the fermentation process, they would put grapes in this wineskin so that they could then enjoy that wine later. But what happens when you put fermenting grapes in a closed area? What happens? It expands. The carbon dioxide expands to the point of where it then completely ferments, and you can utilize and enjoy the wine, right? The practice and what was being talked about in the first century in reference to that passage that I just read was the practice of taking new wine and putting it into an old wineskin. What do you think happens when you take something that is new and put it in something that is old? It bursts because the stretching that happened the first time has already maxed it out. It doesn't have the framework any longer to be able to occupy that space, and then you lose the wine and the wineskin all at once. My suggestion is that's what we need. I am not going to be able to create a revolution that just reorganizes everything into new structures or old structures so that you're going to get the same results. It's just going to be 10 generations later. And the reason why Alan has been such an advocate about this for so long when he talks about things like organic, he says when you look about it 10,000 years ago in cultures, it was nothing but organic. And guess what? Those structures, those civilizations did not survive. They didn't survive because they couldn't, because of how they were seeing and processing this new information. So Alan continues to help us, reframe us to know that our ability to manage that regenerative process puts us in a position to really create change. Change that really means something. So I'm going to propose there are some rhythms that I think we should have in the natural systems that will help us to understand how we do these things differently. And so we'll look at it from understanding the living process. What is it to be holistic and what is it to be intelligent? So this organizational structure and design that I think should change should be built on this ecological understanding of how the living systems work. And so when we talk about design, structure, and governance, we talk about looking at nature as a means to understand how it is organized, how it is structured, how it is designed to be able to create outcomes that are truly in line with the whole. And to use that process as something to inform social organizations to make decisions that really are holistic, that truly are regenerative, and that the outcomes embrace everything that we've talked about all day. And that we have the right measuring tools in place to be able to see this turn into something quite amazing. So just imagine for a moment, just like we have a grazing tool, holistic plan grazing, just like we have holistic financial planning and all of the processes that have been created to help manage that regenerative process in a natural setting, I believe those same kind of tools can exist in an organizational setting so that there is no disconnect when someone is addressing a biological issue with a social issue within an organizational context. And I think we all have to commit ourselves to seeing that as not just, that's a great thing to do, but absolutely essential. Because all of us are dealing with an enormous amount of new information, new ideas, new solutions. And guess what? It all goes back and goes through these filters, these structures that exist right now. And what comes out doesn't make sense and lacks humanity. And we can't continue to accept those outcomes. So John Ralston Saul, which Alan has used many times, the reduction of politics, economics, social problems, and the art to mathematical visions and obscure hermeneutical sealed vocabularies may well be looked by those who have come after us as one of the greatest follies of our civilization. In essence, we have to recognize that our approach, our structures, our processes, our design is flawed. It isn't just simple solutions, they're complex solutions. So I would say at this point, it is going to take a level of intelligence far different than it's ever been before. It really, truly needs to be something that is holistic. So when we think about this emerging intelligence, we all know what it means to have an IQ. We have been introduced to the idea of what it means to have an EQ so that we understand we work with one another. But I ask for us to consider the possibility of having an HQ. A holistic intelligence where someone is seeing it from a far different perspective. When you think holistically, you then start to design holistically. You're not going to use a reductionist structure to create holistic outcomes. It will never happen. Now, what's interesting is you as an individual can do it all day long because it's you. But you in an organization has structure and processes and designs that you have to deal with that force out something that is not what you wanted to see from what you inputted it to be. So the kind of holistic intelligence recognizes the ability for us to see things in a completely different light. Thomas Merton, if man is to recover his sanity and spiritual balance, there must be a renewal of communion between the traditional, contemplative disciplines and those of science, between the poet and the physicist, the priest and the psychologist, the monk and the politician. Why would Thomas Merton say that? Because he recognized that for us as a society to be able to offer real legitimate solutions, that it wasn't going to come from silos. It wasn't going to come from departments. It was coming from people who are coming together with passions and insights versus people in their corners fighting for their fiefdoms and their ideas. We're all going to have to come together with an idea of changing that which we know is not working. So, imagine this, for purposes of the future, that as we're addressing these challenges and issues, that we have these new solutions for organizational regeneration, right? Using the natural ecosystem process as a guide to holistic decision-making. Abundance and disturbance, natural rhythms for redefining roles and outcomes. Measuring wealth through a variety of holistic and regenerative indicators. Identifying and managing degenerative processes within ecosystems. And societal governance transformed by regenerative designs and tools. My call to you for action is just do not allow your current structures, your current designs to get in the way of everything that we've talked about today. They need to change. They will not hold this incredible emerging information. It needs to be reinvented. We need entrepreneurs, we need innovators, we need great thinkers to step up and say, it should look like this. It's going to come from things like holacracy, which is a new way to see governance in terms of organizations. It's going to come from biomimicry or other organizations that recognize there's intelligence that needs to be applied to the structure and change it. And then when we do that, I truly do believe we get new information that flows into these new structures and frameworks and tools. And what comes out is regenerative abundance. Right? But don't kid yourself. You don't change the structure, we are not going to get regenerative abundance. It's broken. It needs to be replaced. And you're not going to transform it. You're going to have to replace it. It's tough. And as Daniela said earlier, it's an intelligent, persevering work that we will be committed to. And some will not ever see the results. But I know I am, and all of you that are in this room today are committed to seeing actual outcomes. And if that's true, then we've got to do what it takes to make that happen. For all of these people, and for all of you, and for the billions of people that rely on us to do something different for all of humanity. Thank you.